Gareth A. Davies, good morning to you.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Very well, thanks. So, Anthony Joshua, that was something else, the way he stopped Alexander Povetkin in the 7th round on Saturday. Let me ask you this first. Were you worried at any point in those opening 3 or 4 rounds?
I think I was worried all the way till... Well, actually, no, 4 rounds, yes. There was great concern because he is clearly defensively vulnerable. And Povetkin was very clever, very smart, very savvy in setting up to throw the right hand and the left hook. But, you know, I think this is going to be the ride with Anthony Joshua. He's got those 3 belts very early in his career, 3 of the world's heavyweight title belts. And you're watching a work in progress. But I tell you what, he's one of the best finishers I've ever seen. There's no doubt about that. As good, if not better, than Lennox Lewis. Probably the best British finisher since people like Henry Cooper. And if he can get his defensive savvy right and get his game plan right, this guy could go a very, very long way. Sounds strange to say it, given that he's knocked out 21 of his 22 opponents and he holds 3 of the world title belts. But, you know, there are flaws there, and I think it's what makes it more exciting.
Yeah, well, he said it himself in the aftermath that he's got his knockout streak back, and it is, as you say, given the numbers, strange that the knockout streak had ever deserted him. But there was a sense that perhaps the Vladimir Klitschko fight, to some people, to the cynics out there, might have been the peak of Anthony Joshua's career, but I think he certainly dispelled that with the way he finished off that fight on Saturday.
Absolutely. It's amazing that Povetkin got up from the first knockdown, frankly. Shows how what great condition he was in, how brilliant, what a great camp he'd had, and how ready he was to put everything on the line. A tremendous will to get up the second time. Look, Klitschko was kind of coming of age fight for Anthony Joshua, in which he showed that he could carry a big occasion and that he could come back from a horrendous moment, i.e. being knocked down in the 6th round, come through a tunnel of confusion and come out the other side and, you know, win in dramatic fashion. I think when you look at it at the moment, when you look at his style and where he's at, Deontay Wilder is a very, very dangerous proposition. It's almost like a shootout with Joshua. Tyson Fury, the Tyson Fury that beat Vladimir Klitschko in Dusseldorf in 2015, could probably outbox that guy, and Joshua would have to go hunting and look for a knockout. But I think what we've got with Joshua, he's a man that came to boxing very late in his teens. He's a natural fighter. He wants to fight. He's got an incredible physique. He pushes himself to the limit in physical conditioning and tries to learn the art of boxing. He's still very young in the sport. And you can see him thinking his way through a fight. And so I think they're just going to try and have to adapt his game plan and his styles for every fight.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, actually, because Andy Lee on Twitter was saying that the most impressive thing about the KO was that Joshua was setting up that finish from the 2nd round on. He constantly jabbed the body and took his time. Once the pattern had been established, he threw the right hand a la Tommy Hearns, which is big praise indeed. And it is, as you say there, kind of indicative of a fighter who, the older he gets, the more his boxing IQ improves.
Definitely, and if you look at the number of rounds that the 2 men had, and you look at Povetkin's experience, it was vastly more than Anthony Joshua. Even held his left hand low a la Carl Froch at one point. I don't know if you noticed that. And he told us afterwards in a huddle with the national media, that from the English national media, that he was thinking his way through the fight. And I think that's an advancement for Joshua. The danger with him is that he's got to be very sharp early, and he wasn't against Povetkin. Believe me, Povetkin was a real danger. I mean, I'm sure I spoke to you in the build-up to this fight, and I always felt that Povetkin would be dangerous for 4 or 5 rounds, and then that Joshua would take over. I didn't think he'd do it so quickly in such devastating fashion, but you're right. Fencing to the body was very clever. He used the jab more, and what I liked about him, I was doing the broadcast commentary for Talk Sport on the night, as well as working for the Telegraph, and I had a sense, thankfully I was right, that when he was wearing Povetkin's shots a bit more in the 5th and the 6th, and when he was rolling with them and moving away, that he was actually growing in confidence and was beginning to see where he could get through.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I need to ask you, what's with Anthony Joshua in the last week or so, talking so much about defeat? It's almost as if somebody's told him, you know, you need to, I don't know, show a bit more mortality in your quotes to the media, because he mentioned the idea that Sugar Ray Robinson had lost in his career in the build-up to the fight, and, you know, if he can lose, anybody can lose. But then he went and he said it again in the immediate aftermath of the fight. It's as if Anthony Joshua is living in a sphere right now where he's constantly bracing himself for that ultimate defeat.
Do you know, it's funny, I've heard him talk like that probably since about fight 15, believe it or not. He spent a lot of time around Vladimir Klitschko. I think it was the summer of 2015, he spent time around Vladimir Klitschko. We didn't know at the time that he was going to fight for the world title so quickly, or that the belts would become available. And I think around Klitschko, he was learning from Klitschko that you are going to lose at some point as a heavyweight. It's, you know, the perils of facing big men, where one punch can change the course of your career, your life, the way people think about you, that it's better to prepare for that. And Anthony Joshua is a student of boxing history as well. Yeah. And I think looking back in it, he knows how good some of these guys were and that they lost sometimes. And I think it allows him to have a very relaxed focus, because he's got so much weight on his shoulders. Remember, he's just done 4 stadium fights in a row, with nigh on average 80,000 people per event. So he's carrying the promotion. So I think it's his way of making himself realise that he wants to win. It's not he has to win. And sports psychologists would tell you that's a very good way to go into very high pressure situations when everything's at stake.
What do you reckon is the next move here then, Gareth? Because obviously it seems that if he can get both Dillian Whyte and Deontay Wilder in the next year, that's probably going to work out the best for him. And eventually, if he can get Tyson Fury on his repertoire as well and beat all 3, then he is, without question, the greatest heavyweight of this era. And it will be very, very good for his bank balance as well. But in terms, as we can see on screen here, Anthony Joshua saying why so serious, as Tyson Fury has blocked him on Twitter for some strange reason.
Yeah,
but in terms of the very next move, like, you look at the potential Wilder fight, and like you talk about the potential of Fury versus Wilder happening in the Staples Centre with like a capacity of 21,000. Like, Anthony Joshua is operating in an entirely different plane to Deontay Wilder, and the idea that Shelley Finkel is actually proving to be a hard bargainer with Eddie Hearn, in my view, is a little bit of a nonsense. Like, should Deontay Wilder's camp not be absolutely begging for the fight with Anthony Joshua? 90,000 people in Wembley, the greatest heavyweight in the States against the greatest heavyweight on this side of the Atlantic. It'll be a mega fight. It'll be a win-win-win for all involved, except, of course, for the eventual loser, which you'd suspect might be Deontay Wilder if we're to believe that Anthony Joshua is really back.
They're all brilliant points. To address the first one, yes, the fight between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder makes sense to happen in the UK, no question about it. I don't think it'll be April next year, even though Wembley's booked. I've just got a feeling it's going to delay. My instinct is that Wilder beats Fury, but you never know in that fight. And it could end up with Dillian Whyte or even Jarrell Miller, big baby Jarrell Miller, being an opponent for Joshua. You never know. The key for me is that, in a way, Wilder needs Joshua more than Joshua needs Wilder. Joshua will need Wilder eventually, because there will always be question marks, rather like there were about Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe, that they obviously fought in the Olympics but never fought as heavyweight professionals or as champions. To complete the era, to fold in the era that he wants to do, as you say, to become the great one of this era, he will have to face Deontay Wilder. Sorry about the camera shake this morning. It's early in the morning. I've rushed to Heathrow, by the way, and I'm holding my camera out with my hand in one of the lounges. But the next move is really the key thing. Eddie Hearn is the front man, of course, for Anthony Joshua. As a fighter, he will want to fight everyone. It's in his nature. Don't believe he doesn't want to fight Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, Dillian Whyte, Alexander Usyk in the same weekend. He'd get in there if he couldn't finish all of them. But I think what's going to happen now is there's going to be a lot of negotiating. Eddie Hearn set a 5-week deadline for Wilder to sign for Wembley next year, putting pressure on Finkel again to sign before he fights Tyson Fury. If he loses, they'll go down a different route for Joshua. But I think it's a very wise move. If it does happen in April, I think it's brilliant for the division because they can fight more than once. And I think if they fight early and it's a good fight, they will fight twice, maybe 3 times. If they don't meet for another year and a half because things and ego in the way.
Yeah. Let's bring you up the results of that poll that we put up a moment ago. Who should Anthony Joshua fight next? Wilder with 53%, Fury with 42%, and Dillian White with only 5%, which is actually kind of surprising. I thought more people would have wanted them to see rejuvenated Dillian White in the near future, but it seems that Deontay Wilder is the #1 contender in the eyes of the public, and that will be one hell of a fight, and hopefully that might happen next April. Gareth, before we let you go, we haven't spoken to you since the Conor McGregor press conference last week. It was an interesting one. You've spoken on the show before about how Conor McGregor has been able to get inside the heads of his opponent before. Andy Lee on screen watched the Conor McGregor press conference live, and I think it's one of the most sensational things he's ever seen. Dana White said it was one of the darkest press conferences he's ever seen. Do you agree with all those things?
Yeah, I do, and I'd add that you know, sitting here with a double shot of tequila as I'm about to board the flight for San Francisco at 9 o'clock in the morning. I don't think there was whiskey in that bottle. I think he was brilliant. I think you could see he was controlling his heart rate because he was very calm when he was talking to journalists, but he got very effusive and very irascible, as he does in a brilliant way against Khabib. Look, he said a few things that were below the belt, but that's his style. I think he rattled Khabib. I loved his presence of mind when he said to Khabib when they went nose to nose, "You're not breathing." Very, very uncomfortable half an hour or an hour for Dana White. But it's a shame there weren't fans in there, but you understand the security reasons. But, you know, for a man to do that set as he did with nothing coming back, i.e. like a comedian with no audience and no laughter, giving him that juice and that venom and bringing him around, I thought he was incredible. I've said it all along. I think he's got 7 minutes to beat Khabib or really hurt Khabib, because otherwise I think he'll be mauled in wrestling terms as the fight goes on. But, you know, I'm heading out there now. I'm going to the super fight at Bellator this weekend. Rory McDonald against Gegard Mousasi, Rampage Jackson, Vanderlei Silva, and then I go to Vegas for the Conor McGregor event, and then to the East Coast of America for the Bellator semi-finals, heavyweight semi-finals. Chael Sonnen, Fedor Emelianenko, Matt Mitrione, and Ryan Bader. These are 3. I think this is the 3 biggest weeks in terms of cards and names and events that we've seen in MMA ever.
Right, okay. Well, we wait with bated breath. 12 days out from the big one. We'll chat to you before October 6th, no doubt. Gareth A, thank you very much.
Cheers, gents.
Gareth A. Davies there of The Telegraph.